Okay, in this short video, I want to discuss the notion of our audience for a written version of our analysis. So the written report. And the question is, who are we writing to? And we need to think about the ways we can approach that question so that we can have multiple answers. And from one block of work. In other words, the larger category. Well, let's just discuss our categories. You know, we definitely should be writing to the younger generation, but which generation is going to have invested concern about this? Invested concern. Now, I've produced a sense of artificial concern in the class because this has been the weight of our work in the large part. We obviously have done other things these 2 semesters that have helped improve in terms of writing, right? But this has been a big project for us. And so the question that we need to ask, right, is who's going to be concerned about this enough to read it and listen to it and carefully think through it with us. So put yourself on the audience end of it, and pretend you've already finished the work, polished it off, okay? Notice that we have not done anything right now with this work to address professional literature already on the subject. Now, we've used articles and data and common knowledge material. Now, that's not necessarily the right term to use, but let's say mainstream mediated material. All right, we've gotten them off the websites, the news sites, the financial websites, the actual graphs that we've done. We've worked with the raw data, okay, but not any of this is actual. We haven't approached this topic of whether about retirement strategies, and even the very notion of whether or not to embrace a retirement strategy. We haven't looked at any professional, in the sense of academic, okay, highly analytic, rigorous in its logic chopping and thesis formation. We haven't really looked at that sort of material. So we haven't gone to the finance journals or the economic journals to peruse or to investigate this topic that we've chosen. So we have really tried to set off on a sort of a manual of sorts that would really engage the information we've tried to gather and to package it and to couch it or phrase it correctly on a certain level, and then to give advice. And this is more along our readership, I think, is going to be more along the lines of someone who has not had a professional background on this, so they haven't had any formal study on finance, and although they have begun to dabble in things, they haven't carried on their self-education with much continuity or consistency or rigor. So, but they're willing, okay? They're willing, and they sort of need an introductory work to get them thinking about something, to get them thinking about this in the right direction. So, I'm thinking that our primary audience would be the 20-something to 30-something group of professionals that are beginning to sense the need. They're beginning to listen to the voice that's so prevalent in American mainstream culture. And they're beginning to feel the pressures of having to be financially secure. Now, this group is going to have uncritically, for the main part, uncritically accepted the notion that financial security is something they need to pursue. Now, it does have a sort of carte blanche appeal to it. I don't know if that's the right phrasing there. It sort of has this. Wouldn't almost anybody consider that to be a worthy goal? Wouldn't almost anybody consider that if you have achieved that, then you have achieved something. I'm talking about financial security. So what I mean by carte blanche idea here for running after it is that it's sort of a great equalizer. No matter what your background is, no matter what your intelligence level may be, or your race or anything like that, if you can achieve this, then people are willing to look at you almost regardless at the other things you do, as long, again, as now this, we haven't even touched upon this, but I do believe it's a sign of a postmodern culture, which I believe we're still in right now, that they settle to the lowest common denominator in terms of morality, and that is going to be in terms of how to evaluate the worth of activity or individuals and how to help each other. It's going to be on a material level. So you think of the ways that are most lauded as far as like helping each other nowadays in the mainstream news and that sort of thing. It's going to be who has met somebody's material need, who has given someone a house, who has given someone money, who has given someone food or clean water, or who has. So there's the material gifts that are prevalent. And then you look at how worth is determined, and it's determined by a very easy common denominator. Lowest common denominator here is going to be the almighty dollar. So this is a very easy way to establish rankings in corporate America. All right. So if you can somehow achieve financial success, this sort of whitewashes many sins in the public's eyes. All right. And so what I'm saying is that a lot of people are going to be concerned about this when all of a sudden they realize they have become a full-fledged adult or independent individual in mainstream America. Okay. Now this is going to involve for them getting a job and figuring out certain financial aspects that are necessary just to make it in America. For example, how to take out a loan, how to keep your credit scores right, that sort of thing. And they're going to begin sensing how important it is for mainstream America that finances are always front and center in what you're doing. So it's until you get to that point that you have vested interest in this, which is some reason I had to keep on regaling you as a class to say, come on, let's keep on going, because frankly, some of you have always struggled to be interested in this because you haven't been forced into that pressure cooker yet. All right. So I think the 20-something, 30-something adult that is trying to become an independent earner, supporter, head of household, that sort of thing, and who does not have a professional background in finance, and who is beginning to sense the pressure of, I need to catch up, I need to get my savings or my retirement plan in order and aggressive. Okay, so there's going to be an essence of being aggressive here. Okay, so as far as like those specifics, that's what we need to be looking into. All right. Now, but they're broader. So, well, this is what I'm saying. I mean, people that are 60, 65, 70, they're not going to be reading our paper probably. All right. People that are 15, 20, they probably aren't going to be reading our paper. People that are 40, 45, 50, now I'm making a horrible stereotype here. All right. Please allow for the exceptions. But at one point in life, you get comfortable with what you've already been doing, and you don't believe you have enough time left to really rework things, and you're just going to go ahead and write out the status quo, your personal status quo. So I would actually be surprised for a mid-life person, 35, 40, 45, 50, all of a sudden saying, I need to invest in stocks. If that person hasn't already made that decision, that person at that point, midlife or a little bit beyond midlife, that person probably isn't going to make that decision. So I really do think that we need to be talking about the 20-something, 30-something group, okay? Non-professional. No, professional in that they're full-time work, okay, and taking on a lot of debt, a lot of financial obligation in America, but not professional in financial matters, although deeply concerned and willing to learn. So we need to keep the tone friendly, non-confrontational, colloquial in the sense of we can just use a regular level of diction. All right, let's keep it from getting too technical. Although we will have to discuss a placement of a glossary in our work, so that the important terms get defined right away. Not just the definition of stock, but some other terms. We'll have to figure out a method for doing that. But we do definitely need to keep the tone a popular, colloquial tone. Now, again, what I mean by popular is not necessarily people like it. Like a friend might be popular in high school, but I'm talking about popular in the sense that the writing and the information is addressed to an audience at large, not a professional audience, but a popular one, populace. All right, the people at large. So now those would be some of the more specific categories. Let's step back, and I'm thinking in terms of audience. All right, a knowledge level is going to be a little bit, just a little bit. They got some notion of how things work. There's going to be, we need to be ready to encounter a lot of misconceptions in our audience. Okay, not completely ignorant, but certainly not up to par. Okay, you are probably at this point more knowledgeable than they would be. All right. What about attitude level? Certainly sympathetic, or at least neutral, but probably sympathetic in the sense that they're already going to be convinced that they need to pick a retirement strategy. Okay, so we got the knowledge level, we got the attitude, we've got the demographics like age and which allows us to talk about things in terms of concern and tone, so we have that. What about some broader categories? I'm essentially talking about the secular versus the, and I don't want to say Christian, because there are a lot of people in America today that are going to be Christian, but only nominally so. In other words, it's a traditional thing for them. They're comfortable with the language and they're comfortable with the practice, but it really hasn't changed their life down deep inside. Okay, there has not been a fundamental act of grace on their heart. So they approach Christianity as a way of life, among other ways of life, equally respectable with the others. Okay, now they will, language will pop up, say that privilege is faith over science and that sort of thing in this way, because they're very interested in maintaining the credibility of this way of life. But for a large group of people, Christianity is not necessarily the way of life. It's not the only right way among many wrong ways that are superficially similar to Christianity, but essentially different. For many people, Christianity is simply another way of life that's essentially the same as the others. Okay, I don't want to be addressing that group, because we may as well just lump those people in with the secular mindset, since at the end of it all, they are still embracing an essentially secular mindset. In fact, I want to suggest to you that our two groups need to be the secular and we'll have to come up with a term for this, but this is going to be the pilgrim, the essentially changed, the person who truly, because of the adherence that he or she has to Christ's exclusive message, has become a citizen of truly a different country, a heavenly country. And for this person, this world truly at the heart of it all is not home, is not his or her nation or country. There is an alienation, a strange sense of not fitting in for this group, because we're waiting for that higher city, that heavenly city. So there's that radical act of grace that can be nothing more than or nothing other than a miracle in the heart, that makes a heart inimical to God all of a sudden accepting of God. And there is only one thing that can cause that heart to be this way, and that is God's sovereign choice on that person's heart, right? That's the group I'm talking about. Okay, now we've got the secular, and then we've got this other. And I suggest to you that if we write the core of this paper first to the secular, and then we step away and tack on exit strategies, exit mechanisms that reinterpret it all for the sacred, we have work that we can view in discrete parts that we can separate out then. Again, think of the Lego block thing. If we save the sacred message to a few Lego blocks at the end that show one how to reinterpret the main questions of the prior work, and if we can separate out the advice in general as far as actual practices and address that towards a secular mindset, then we have other work that we can separate out, and all of this then becomes much more open to new configurations, and thus more of a shelf life. Okay, so we need to write the bulk of this to a generalized secular audience, and then at the end we need to come in and say there are other questions that can be addressed to another audience. Now, it won't work to keep both of this together in one paper, but what I am saying is that if we do one part right, the part that's addressed mainly to the secular, then that in itself is one paper, and then if we take that then and add to it, we can have a second paper that makes a whole lot of sense to this other group, the sacred city versus the secular city. Okay, the heavenly city versus the mundial city. And in that other paper, that larger paper that addresses the sacred city, we can bring up some core questions that we really can't or shouldn't or don't even need to bring up in the secular version. Okay, so I need to ask you to write the chunk of this in terms that would be easily apprehended and comprehended and assessed by a secular audience, as long as we understand that eventually we will put another ending to it or some other parts to it that will radically change it later so that it's much more fitted to a sacred audience, an audience for the pilgrim audience. So let's keep that in mind as we write the paper. We're at the point now where, as we watch the organization take place and we work on the flow and the transitions, that we really do need to come into this notion of what must our tone be like, what sort of diction can we use, what sort of presuppositions can we appeal to, what sort of testimony or document can we use as accepted evidence based on our audience. And I think that we need to have, in the most general way, two audience groups in mind, the secular and the sacred.